This is the American Law Journal.
My neighbor is getting disability, and I know that he's healthy. There's fraud in the system, no doubt, but really, how much? Good evening, I'm Christopher Naughton, and tonight on the American Law Journal, how bad is Social Security disability fraud? Well, according to this CBS report, too many workers, at least too many federal workers, are gaming the system.
It's always good to see federal employees hard at work. That is, unless they're collecting a check for being totally disabled at the same time. That's fraud. In this case, the double dipper is the California TSA screener behind the blurred image. Federal disability is intended for those with medical conditions so severe they can't work at any job. Today, so many people claim to fit that definition, 18 million people are getting checks.
And I will just tell you, I'm biased when we have 1 in 20 people in this country on disability. I don't believe it. As a practicing physician in a poor area of the country with lots of problems, I don't buy it.
By the government's own estimate, fraud and other improper payments ate up $25 billion in disability payments in recent years. Senators from both parties asked the General Accountability Office to investigate. The GAO started with the obvious. They cross-referenced federal paychecks with names on federal disability. In just 3 agencies alone, 1,500 federal employees were found getting disability they probably didn't deserve. Like this Michigan woman, she qualified for disability because of mood and personality disorders. 7 months later, she found work as a letter carrier, but kept on taking disability checks, a total of $37,000. This Pennsylvania woman collected disability checks even as surveillance video showed her working as a mail clerk, $19,000 in fraudulent payments. Adding insult to supposed injury, nearly all the people the GAO tracked down had gotten a little extra bonus, $250 in stimulus money intended for disabled people. The Social Security Administration is supposed to do periodic reviews to see if beneficiaries are still disabled. But there's such a backlog, the government relies heavily on the honor system, where recipients report their own health as better, worse, or the same. The head of Social Security, Michael Astrew, wouldn't agree to an interview. Instead of explaining how he's fighting fraud, he criticized the GAO. Last year, he told Congress that the screening tool that detects when someone's gone back to work generates too much information.
That we can't possibly follow up on the leads that would come from that in any, certainly not in my professional lifetime in the agency.
Still looking for answers, we went to the White House Budget Office. They wouldn't agree to an interview either. But they showed us new technology they're trying out to fight fraud at other government agencies. The president's new budget calls for more money to review cases and save hundreds of billions of dollars. Due to privacy protections, we haven't been told the ultimate fate of that TSA agent in California. But by the time investigators caught up with her, she'd defrauded taxpayers out of $108,000, all while earning $50,000 a year at her federal job, collecting a $250 stimulus check, and living large in a house listed for $1.8 million. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
And 2 lawyers and a former SSD judge join us tonight to answer your questions. Let's go ahead and meet them. Jess Leventhal joins us once again, has spent his entire career representing claimants in disability matters. He's with Pennsylvania's Leventhal, Sutton, and Gornstein. The Honorable Roger Schwartz presided over thousands of Social Security disability cases in his 20-plus years on the bench. And as always, the opinion that the good judge brings to this program is all his own. And I see, Judge, you've got something different and shiny on your lapel or on your jacket tonight.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. This is all part of the effort of various veterans organizations to let people be sensitive and to know that our military is out there and it's within the civilian community, and it's always serving our country. There's been a great gulf that's developed since the professional army, professional military was established back in the 1970s. It seems that our country has forgotten that the military is part of our civilization. It's part of our culture and our population. And we feel that we want to remind the general population that we're out there, we're among the people, and we're part of this country.
Yeah, in some ways, Judge, you served in Vietnam, correct?
Yes.
And back in those days, of course, there was a draft, and drafts are long
Right.
ago in our distant past here in America. So sometimes when we're fighting wars, even though we're ready to pull out of one country, even when we're fighting these wars, we sometimes forget that all of us have a stake in it. So thank you.
There's been some stress to the civilian soldier concept in this country, and we should try to revive it, I think.
Thanks, and I understand that doesn't have a great deal to do with Social Security disability, although probably find out tonight as we're talking to some of our other guests that there are probably a lot of vets over the years who have...
I might disagree with you there,
Yeah,
Chris,
go ahead. You're right,
in that
Judge.
regard, because we're going to be talking about money, we're going to be talking about economics. There's so many things that are impinging on the welfare and on the treasury of the United States at this point that the military becomes very important. And what's happening in the military becomes very important to Social Security and disability issues.
Thank you, Judge. And again, we always appreciate your presence here on the program. And again, as a retired judge, you seem to be able to render some quips and some conclusions that maybe you couldn't if you were still on the bench.
Yes. I love it. I love it,
Great.
and I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Yes,
Alan
sir.
Polonsky is here as well, and it's in a former life. Alan was with the Social Security Administration. I just found out tonight that he was also with the Government Accounting Office at one time. All these years I've known Alan Polonsky, and it wasn't the GAO back in those days.
The General Accounting Office.
Yes.
They changed the name. Yes.
Right, and there's a really good spitting contest going on between the Social Security Administration and the GAO, which we're going to get to. Alan is with Polonsky and Polonsky in New Jersey. After he left the Social Security Administration, after about 10 years, he again launched his own practice, and it's been that way ever since. Folks, we are taking your telephone calls tonight live. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and anywhere that the web reaches out, because we are simulcasting on the web tonight. And as a matter of fact, after we leave WFMZ TV at the half-hour mark, we'll continue taking your telephone calls and your questions on WFMZ.com. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. I'm not going to run a whole lot of numbers by you guys, but I know you've been dying to talk about this for years. So 1,500 government employees today, according to the latest study by the GAO and the SSA, 1,500 government employees took improper payments in 2008. 62,000 people who were on disability also received commercial permits. And again, in that 1 year of 2008, $10.7 billion in overpayments. We talk about insurance fraud of different stripes on this television program. We've never really talked about SSD fraud. And even though you folks represent claimants, can we at least stipulate to this fact, there's fraud in the system, and it's an issue. And it's a big issue when governments are running deficits.
There are dollars. And where there are dollars, there are going to be people figuring out ways to cheat and to steal them. That's inevitable. The question is how much, how prevalent is it, how many people are involved in it. The numbers that you just cited, 4 million people receive disability benefits, 62,000 may have collected benefits improperly. I don't know if that's true, not true. That's a very small percentage of the people that are receiving benefits.
Overpayments are a very interesting topic because a lot of times Social Security runs almost runs a parallel system. One system is looking at whether or not people are working. The other is looking at whether or not they're disabled. So while they're looking at whether or not you're working or what you're doing, and they may be sending you letters, you get another letter that says, hi, your disability continues. So you think, wow, so my benefits continue. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about a very complex system. So it's no big deal to run a $25,000 to $50,000 overpayment in a year and a half when you think you're still eligible because of the various programs. I'm not saying there isn't fraud, but some of those
what
numbers...
you're saying is it takes a while for the system to actually catch up. So if I'm receiving benefits and all of a sudden I'm ready to go back to work and I might even be involved in a back to work program, it takes a little while for the brakes to work. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it takes a while for the letters to come out, but even if you're telling them, I've got clients who've told them, hi, I'm back to work. They're told everything's fine. They're getting incorrect information, and they run a $50,000 to $75,000 overpayment. That's not unusual.
Though. Let's be realistic. How many people do we know that who are collecting and get an opportunity to get a job that they can perform despite their disability are going to take that check from Social Security and give it back and notify Social Security that, hey, I don't need this anymore. I've got a job and I can handle it. I don't know anybody who would ever do that.
But what happens is they're entitled to a trial work period.
That's
they're
right.
entitled to go back to work and try to work to see if they're able to do it. So the first call they make to Social Security is they're told, well, you can work for 9 months and you can continue to collect the benefits while you work for 9 months. And that's entirely proper. It's when Social Security doesn't follow up a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, where there becomes a very large overpayment and the person says, well, I told them that I was working.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Right.
That's not fraud. That's not fraud. There's no criminal
Well,
state
yeah,
of mind there. It's a matter of negligence on the part of the organization.
But when they're counting these numbers, they're getting thrown into the mix, Judge. That's what we're talking about. That's what's going on here. But at the same time, there's also something called impairment-related work expenses. And people are allowed to try and work. And then, you know, sit there and try and figure out, okay, it's $1,000 a month substantial gainful activity, 4.3 weeks in a month. You have to be an accountant to figure out some of this.
There's a burden on these people that probably is way above their ability to, the responsibility they have to report is above their ability to comprehend.
But those are part
on most of these cases.
Right, but those are part of the numbers that they're running. I mean, you can run a $50,000, $60,000 overpayment. If you're getting $1,500 a month and you've got kids getting another $750, $2,200, $2,250 a month, 15, 18 months, you're at $45,000. You're there.
And the one aspect that the government does not consider is how the money gets integrated in somebody's personal budget, is absorbed, is debilitated, and they don't have anything to back it up when the government comes to them, taps them on the shoulder, and says, hey, you got money that you shouldn't have gotten.
And you know, Judge, and actually we're starting to get some phone calls in right now. We've gotten some emails in, and actually let me read to you the first email of the evening. This is from Charlotte from Woodbury, New Jersey. My family and my church friends say that I seem like I no longer am disabled and it's time to get over it. My doctor, I'm sorry, I put the wrong one up here. I'm sorry about that. We're gonna get back to that one in just a moment. That's the host blew that one. But there is a caller or an email tonight that talks about this very issue, that, you know, I'm on disability and I've gotten payments and I've gotten overpayments and I've told the administration, don't pay me anymore. I'm not injured anymore. I'm not disabled anymore.
The answer the administration is going to give you to that is, well, you knew that you got this money and you shouldn't get it, so therefore you should have exercised the self-discipline and taken that money and put it aside in a private account, maybe a savings account, earn a little bit of interest. We're not going to bug you about that little bit of interest, but you better be ready to give us the lump sum when we demand it, because we will demand it.
Here's a question
That's an
from
unrealistic expectation.
All right, and that may be true, Judge, but this is the question from Darlene in Hellertown. I got disability benefits for 2 years. I went back to work, and I received back-to-work benefits for over a year. After that, I wrote them, meaning the administration, several times and said that I was fine, I was working, but they kept paying me. I thought this was some extended back-to-work program, but now I'm being told I have to pay the money back.
Yes.
Do I?
Well, it depends, and this is what we were talking about before.
Okay, I got a yes, a yes and a maybe. All right.
Yeah, probably.
A yes and no and a maybe on the panel. Well, there you go. That's good.
Probably. But there are a number of different ways to look at it. And one is, what letters did she get? Did she get one of these letters that said, hey, we looked at you physically, and we think that your disability continues? Okay, 9 months trial work period, could be any 9 months, over 60. You get a 2-month termination. What about impairment-related work expenses? It's on the form, but nobody explains that.
Does somebody know what to do when that, because I'm sure you've talked to clients who said, Mr. Polonsky, I got this letter in the mail. You know, what do I do? I mean, it sounds like Darlene might need some legal help because she's obviously going to have to respond to the administration.
Well, there are a couple ways to deal with it. One is fraud is not what we're talking about in those situations.
All right.
People were overpaid. Maybe they will have to pay it back. Maybe they won't have to pay it back. The Social Security has provisions where they wouldn't have to pay it back, where they are without fault in connection with the overpayment, and the repayment would be a hardship for them to do it. What is without fault, as the judge was alluding to? Did they know, or should they have known, that the benefits they were receiving were improper?
Right.
If it is reasonable for them to have believed that the benefits they were receiving were proper, they were getting them as they were supposed to, and it would be a hardship to pay it back, they may not have to pay it back.
Do they cobble together that argument themselves, or do they consult with an attorney?
They consult with an attorney.
Yeah, but you know what? They feel it in their heart. They know it in their subconscious. So while they can't articulate it, they know there's something wrong with what just happened to me.
Yeah.
And That's the issue, and that's why that should motivate them immediately to go to see an attorney, because they can't articulate it
I'm never
in the
going to
right
say
way.
to you that there aren't people in the world who collect benefits that they know perfectly well they're not entitled to. Some of the people in the piece that started the show, where they're working and they've been working for years and they've been hiding it, or they put money in other people's names to do all sorts of things. I have no doubt that there are people who do that.
Right.
But the numbers of people that do that are not nearly what are being bandied about.
Right. So, but the first example would be fraud, or could be fraud.
If you knew if you knew positively that the benefits you were receiving were improper, and you failed to disclose that fact to the Social Security Administration, that's fraud. That's criminal fraud, and I've seen people be charged with criminal fraud in those circumstances.
Actually criminal?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And
okay.
actually, also, if you had a higher level of knowledge, or some kind of could be presumed to have some kind of level of responsibility, which would lead you to be held to a higher standard, that would go hard against you in addressing the issue of fraud, I think. But most people aren't in that position. Most people are Joe the plumber, so to speak, who's been out there in a craftsman job and doesn't know anything about paperwork and presumptions of guilt and innocence, and they see the money coming in, and that's what they're interested in.
Let's go to, I'm sorry, Judge,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off, but we actually do have a caller on this very issue. I think it's Anel. Is it Anel from Catasauqua?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead. What's your question for us tonight, Anel?
Well, I applied. I get Social Security for disability, and I got it for a while, and they told me I received a letter saying that they overpaid me,
Okay.
and then I told them it was a hardship for me, and why did they come to me saying that they overpaid me when I'm not their bookkeeper? That was my exact words.
Right.
I appealed it, and they didn't do anything about it. I was not working or anything else. It just said that they gave me an extra check.
Just one extra check?
Yes.
And now,
Okay.
if it's one extra check, if you send them a letter and say, "Hi, I'm not able to pay this back," and explain why that you can't pay this back, and you didn't know that you would be overpaid, that one check, then absolutely they should waive that. What we're talking about is months and months. But if you haven't sent that letter, send the letter, certified mail, return receipt, and then send letter after letter to follow up with it. But that's not unusual. I mean, one check is something that happens all the time, particularly on concurrent benefits between Social Security Disability and SSI.
I have tried that. My caseworker has tried that. And we have filled out the proper forms for that. They haven't. I tried to get the payments reduced. I can't even get my full amount until 2014.
That sounds like a lot more than one check, Anel.
That's what they told me.
You need to talk to somebody other than your caseworker.
Okay.
Yep, and now it's time to get some legal help there. And again, you can always contact our offices during normal business hours. We'll get you pointed in the right direction. But I'm glad you guys cleared this up, and the judge as well, that when you get caught between a rock and a hard place, this is not the time to start just lobbing balls over to the administration.
Yeah, but what usually comes
You got to sit down with a lawyer.
What usually comes up is we have clients that have some fairly severe emotional issues, and people are telling them, "You look good. Why don't you try and work?" And they may work for a month here, and over the period of 60 months, they could work 9 months, and then don't realize it, but they're through their trial work period, and now they've run a $40,000 or $50,000 overpayment. They don't have the cognitive understanding or emotional ability to handle this. I mean, it's insane, some of what's going on.
Overpayments are complicated. And whether a person is overpaid is one issue. Whether they have to pay it back is a separate issue. Frequently, when we're dealing with Social Security and overpayments, we can't get 2 letters in a row that say the same amount of the overpayment. There is a lot of confusion. There is a lot of difficulty understanding. But there's a fundamental difference between an overpayment and fraud.
Right.
Mistakes are made. That doesn't mean the person lied or cheated or stole or did anything at all improper. Maybe it can be waived, maybe it can't be waived, but at the same time, it's not criminal just because a mistake was made.
But if you're in this position and you're listening tonight, you have to document who you called and when you called them, because the odds are you're getting wrong advice.
Let's take a look at some examples of what fraud might be. And again, Alan and Jess and the judge have been distinguishing between oversight and fraud. Maybe giving false information to the Social Security Administration about your case. That would be fraud. Alleging a disability that you don't have. Accessing someone else's SSA records without permission. Using an incorrectly obtained Social Security number. Forging documents. And here's the big one, I think, because I think this is really where most of the fraud probably takes place. And that CBS report we watched at the top of the show seems to highlight that. Not promptly notifying the Social Security Administration of a change in material circumstances. Judge, I've got to think that if we're talking about fraud in the Social Security disability system, it's really not happening at the initial level when people are paying, not paying, but they're filling out their forms and applying to the administration. And I've got to think it's not happening getting in front of you or an administrative law judge and petitioning for benefits.
There's entirely too much professional tension at that point in time.
Right.
There's too many people looking at the records.
Exactly. So I'd have to think that the fraud has got to take place after someone's been receiving it, and we understand that there's periodic review if you're receiving disability. And I think Commissioner Askew said, you know, more or less, this is an honor system at that point. And once you send your records in, there may not be a whole lot of resources in the administration to check each and every case. So is this where most of the fraud, do you believe, takes place?
There's something I want to, there's a scenario I'd like to bring to your attention and to Jess and Alan's attention. As far as a physical disability is concerned, disability also is a legal concept, much like insanity. It's not a medical concept, okay? When somebody has a physical disability, they have good days and they have bad days. You don't see them on the bad days. They're in their house, they're sitting in their living room chair, they're in bed, and you don't see them. But on the good days, like if they have a bad back or arthritis or rheumatism or whatever, on the good days they come out, they're walking around in the backyard, maybe they do a little bit, and you look at them and you say, that guy's not disabled. That guy, look at what he's doing. He's mowing his lawn. He's putting the garbage away. So right away you make the assumption that there's been fraud, that they've been lying. The fact is that person had a good day. What you don't understand is that for the next 3 days, that individual is going to be pretty badly beat up, and they are going to be sitting on their living room chair for the next 3 days or laying in bed because they exerted themselves entirely too much. The problem is they can't sustain a 40-hour week. And that's what happens from a financial point of view. They can't hold a job. I know people who are craftsmen, will do wonderful things. They work for 1 or 2 days and then they're out for 2 weeks and they can't do a thing.
Yeah, apropos what the judge just mentioned, you showed a little roll of a woman mowing the lawn. Well, maybe her problem is she's crazy. So the fact that she can mow a lawn doesn't say anything about whether or not she can work. Maybe she has MS and she's good for an hour or two a day, and then she's totally exhausted the rest of the time. You can't make assumptions by seeing somebody for a short period of time and assume that that means they're perfectly fit and able to work.
This is part of what someone coined the phrase, part of the my neighbor next door syndrome.
And here's another exacerbation, Chris. We're in a terrible economic situation. God knows how long it's going to last. People are out of work. People are underemployed. They can't find jobs. They look at people who are collecting checks, who they think can do some work, and they get envious. And that envy turns into hatred, turns into aggravation, irritation, and they assume a criminal state of mind on the part of the individual who's receiving sustenance. And it's all because they are in a bad situation and they can work and they can't find work.
Candy, let's take your question real quickly before the end of our first half hour. Again, in the second half hour, we're going to go over to WFMZ.com. But quickly, Candy, what's your question?
Okay, I have been out of work for 2 years now. I mean, for 10 years, I'm sorry. I'm disabled. And I cannot work. I had all my doctors.
Did you apply? Have you applied for disability, and were you turned down?
Yes, I did. I was turned down because they said I was short 2 points for working working points.
Okay, all right. That's eligibility. That's not.
No, that's eligibility.
Right.
She's short 2/4 of coverage.
Right. So it may not be that she's not. She may indeed be disabled. So in other words, Candy, you weren't turned down because they didn't find you disabled. She just can't qualify.
Right, but it
For
may be the
SSD,
onset date.
SSI, rather, she might
Right.
be able to qualify.
Right.
There's other options.
Right.
But onset date is one of them. One of the options you need to look at is what's the onset date you gave for your disability. If you said it was June of 2010 and you were last insured as of 12/31/09, then yeah, they're going to tell you don't qualify. But the question is, did you have the impairment or combination of impairments before December of 09 and you stopped working before then? So it might be an issue of onset date, or it may be that you're just you're short 2/4.
Yeah, and so
That's
again,
why she needs an attorney, Chris, to figure
right.
that one out.
Again,
she needs an
because she
attorney
might-
to look at the books.
all right, because she might possibly be able to qualify for SSD, but then if not, then SSI might be a
Right.
possibility.
There's an option there.
Okay, great.
Or
All
the
right,
earnings
good.
record could be wrong.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So she might actually be eligible for SSD.
You're talking about fraud, and we've been talking about fraud, but there are people who work off the books every day. They work as a bartender, whatever they do, and
Right.
they're not paying in taxes.
Right.
And then they want to file for Social Security disability benefits, and they don't have any credits posted. Now, where was the fraud? It wasn't against Social Security. It was against IRS when they were working off the books. It was their employer deciding to pay them cash rather than pay the employer taxes. So now they end up, and they don't have enough credits. They don't qualify for benefits. They may or may not be eligible for SSI, which is a needs-based program, depending on what other assets and property they have. They're out of luck. Where was the fraud? Again, not with Social Security, when
No.
they worked off the books and really hurt
Right.
themselves.
We can't have
Exactly.
any sympathy for them, Alan.
No,
I'm not having
they
any
either knew or
sympathy
they
for
should
them.
have
They've
known.
abused the system.
Absolutely.
So it came back to bite them in the end, so to speak. But for those of you who are interested in maybe commuting to the administration, that you have a belief that there might be fraud in your neighborhood, in your family, wherever. We do want to give you folks a Social Security Administration fraud hotline, because $10 billion a year is nothing to sneeze at. $25 billion over 3 years, nothing to sneeze at. 1-800-269-0271. That's 1-800-269-0271 if you suspect someone is engaged in fraud. But as we've been discussing tonight, the pursuit sometimes may be worth more than what the administration might recoup. And at the same time, as the judges told us, we still need to do something about the waste in the system. I want to thank my guests for being with me tonight. Alan Polonsky with Polonsky & Polonsky in Audubon, New Jersey. The Honorable Roger Schwartz, the great veteran, the Vietnam vet, who comes and joins us from time to time to dispense his knowledge from his decades on the bench as an SSD judge, and the always pleasant Jess Leventhal from Leventhal, Sutton, and Gornstein. For all of us here at the American Law Journal, until next Monday night, case closed.
This week's American Law Journal has been made possible in part by Leventhal, Sutton, and Gornstein. We have your Social Security disability case covered. Polonsky & Polonsky, former U.S. government counsel representing those seeking Social Security disability benefits. And The Legal Intelligencer, the nation's oldest legal newspaper for lawyers.